Welcome to the BDN podcast. Tonight, we're going to deal with a really big topic and ask a big question. Are private prisons turning into a new slave plantation in the United States? We'll address this right in a moment.
Welcome to our weekly Black Diaspora News podcast. Let's begin.
Welcome once again to the PDN podcast. I'm your host, Brother Roger A. Muhammad. And tonight, we're digging deep into a topic that's not just troubling, but demands our attention right now. The exploitation of incarcerated individuals and their families by big corporations. It's not just stats, it's about real lives. The corporate prison industrial system, profiting billions from near-free prison labor, has led America's prisons to resemble something eerily reminiscent of the slave plantations from the 1800s. You know, the United States, with only 5% of the world's population, somehow manages to lock up a whopping 25% of the world's prisoners. To put it plainly, we've got more folks behind bars in the United States than China, and they've got a heck of a lot more people than the United States. But here's the kicker. The system has got a bias. It's rigged. Black and Latino communities feel the brunt of it. Take, for example, drug-related arrests. Black folks make up just, 12% of the US population, right? But how come they account for literally 36% of those arrested for drug-related offenses? That's absolutely not right. Now let's talk more numbers. 1,096 Black folks incarcerated per 100,000 citizens compared to just 214 among whites. That's a 5-to-1 ratio. And that's just the tip of the iceberg. Now, you might wonder, how did we get here? Well, it's a long story, but we're here to break it down tonight. America has got a history of disproportionately locking up Black and Native folks dating back to slavery and beyond. Now, if we fast forward to today, and it's not just about bars and cells anymore in 2023, it's now a whole industry making up a whopping $80 billion. As a recent eye-opening article from the Final Call newspaper, written by the great sister, Dr. Nisa Islam Muhammad, points out, these corporations are capitalizing on cheap prison labor, and guess who's filling those pockets? You got it. Mostly Black folks, Latinos, and poor white folks. But the question here is, so who's benefiting from this modern day slavery? Well, the list is actually a lot of big names. Names like Walmart, McDonald's, Starbucks, and even Nintendo. They're all on it. At some point, even Nike was a part of that. But of course, they pulled out because they didn't want us to stop buying their Air Jordans, right? Hint to Michael Jordan. But it's all a veiled reinstitution of those old cotton fields from the slave days, but just twisted up in a modern field. But guess what? The Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan saw this coming years ago. He talked about the prison industrial complex being on the stock market and how they're privatizing the whole prison industry. It's all about filling those prisons, and the corporate owners made sure of it. in part 21 of The Time and What Must Be Done, his great series. And by the way, if you haven't heard and watched that series, you really, really need to do so. But he says, quote, the corporate owners of a private prison management company proposed to prison officials in 48 states that they take over the prisons. The one thing that they insisted was that the prisons be 90% filled. You know, like in hotels with the occupancy rate. So they wanted 90% filled for at least 20 years. This is leading us to the question, the minister says. If a prison has to be 90% filled, who is going to fill it? End quote. And as we know, brothers and sisters, based on those statistics that we just read, we, Black folks, Latinos, natives, and also poor whites are the ones filling up those prisons for the benefit of big corporations. But now let's switch gear and talk about hip hop and all of this. You say, what's hip hop got to do with it? Well, when it was created 50 years ago in the Bronx, and we celebrated the 50th anniversary just recently, it was used as the voice of truth, calling out truth to power. But somewhere along the way, it got hijacked. The industry prison complex, along with big music labels, started promoting self-destructive and criminal lifestyles through hip hop. And that's how they kept those prisons filled, mostly with Black men and women. But it's time to shine light on all of this. So stay tuned, because we'll be right back to dig deep into all of this with our brother on the panel and author of 2 books, Brother Gabriel X. So you're not going to want to miss this discussion. Stay tuned right after this break.
There is a need in our community for a universal change. And it has to start with the man. Being a man of God means being a man possessed of the knowledge, the spirit, and the power of God, anointed to do his will. To build a people, you first must make man. Every man, no matter what his color, no matter what his race, every man, in order to be a man, must be a man of God, or he's not a man at all. Let us make man.
All right. So we're back. We're back to get into this topic. Let's dig deep. But before we start, we want to remind everyone, if you have thoughts on this topic, ideas, make sure you put it in the comments, and also make sure you share and subscribe, because this truth, it needs to get out. So I'm joined with my brother, Gabriel X, from the Muhammad Study Group of Montreal. As the audience may or may not know, we are based out of Montreal, Canada, but we're representing for the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan, showing that he is all over the world. And so, brother, thank you for joining us once again, my brother. Abdul Sabir Muhammad, will be joining us, God willing, next week to have a three-way panel. But let's go with you, my brother and author. Let me start with this question. Based on these terrible statistics that we've just covered, uh, would you tend to say that in fact the prison industrial complex has created a form of neo-slave plantation system, or is this an exaggeration in your view?
Thank you for having me, Brother Roger. Your introduction was an eye-opener because I didn't know about Walmart and McDonald's and certainly not about Nintendo. So this is good to know because I've grown up on Nintendo, basically. So coming back to your question, I would take it in a different angle, though, because I wouldn't say it's the prisons did, because you can build a lot of prisons as you want in a town, but if no judge rules as a prison sentence, then you're having an industrial complex that's basically doing absolutely nothing. Therefore, I personally would point out, especially the judicial system, out, because they're implementing. And for those who don't know, the 3/5 of a human being for Black people is in the U.S. Constitution. All right, this is Article 1, Section 2, and there you have it. So this is what they thought about Black people back then, and we can see the result in 2023. So again, there's that. There's the 13th Amendment, which kept a provision to make slaves. Maybe you can put up the slide, Brother Roger, so that people can see that we're not talking out of our hat. It's research. So this is actually the keep it there. This is the Dred Scott case. This is a case in 1857, which the Supreme Court of the United States stated that Black people, descendants of slaves, were not citizens and could not have the rights white people are expected or bound to have. So this is the kind of environment Black people and now Latinos are in. So just to be clear with everyone, and like Brother Roger said, now it is a fact that Black people are getting longer sentences for the same crimes as Caucasians or white people. Now, of course, other than pure racism, we can deduct these longer and even outrageous sentences. I'll give you an example. A Black man received 1,823 years sentence for armed robbery. Now, nobody was killed, nobody was hurt, but the Caucasian who directed that crime got 10 years.
That's insane.
So these are the kind of sentences. This is the system that supplies slaves to the prison industrial complex. That's why I'm not pointing out the complex, because the complex is basically it's a building. But to fill it to 90%, like we heard you quote from the minister, there you have it. So basically, there you go. That is the case. You can search it on Google. It's documented. 1,000, and the person who got that, the Black brother who got that sentence, said that there were people inside the prison who had even worse sentences than he had, something in 2,000 years of prison. So let's be real. There's yes, sir. So out of this, I then wonder what's the kickback that these judges are getting, because, and even the defense attorneys get for such a sentencing, because let us not forget that our people are basically being tricked in plea deals by their supposedly defense attorney. Let's call it that way. So you can receive, like, if you plead guilty, the judge is going to be less severe on you, but then you get 14 years for being Black. For being Black. So, and I'm not even speaking of the police officer, the racist police officer, because of course they're not all like that, but there's a lot of racist police officers who will plant evidence or even trick people into false confessions, like the Central Park 5, which is a very known, how would I say it, case, which 5 young Black men were tricked into confessing of a crime that they did not commit. And I think they were like, maybe you remember 20 years in prison before they were actually exonerated, because somebody else confessed to the crime. And DNA proved that the man who confessed was the one responsible. So we got 5 brothers in prison doing cheap labor while somebody else was guilty. So again, this is, in my opinion, the judicial system that is allowing this neo-slave plantation system, which the industrial complex, the prison industrial complex, is of course benefiting. But again, we have to go to the source, which I believe, other than the white supremacist mentality, you go to the judicial, because everything happens there. So that would be my question, brother, for our audience, and my answer to the question, I mean, for the audience,
Yes,
brother.
sir.
And
Yes,
if you
sir.
have some,
Man.
keep them coming. Keep them coming.
Yeah, that's a great answer, brother. Providing a lot of context and research, and you know, we see that also, you know, like the incarceration rate that is, especially in Black and Brown Latino communities and Native, especially here in Canada, the Native community is really suffering on another level. All the statistics for criminality, homicide, suicide, everything is up in those communities. But one of the things that is a you know has been talked about is actually the role of hip hop, you know, in all of this. And you know, I know that you've had a chance to listen to brother Dr. Wesley, student minister Dr. Wesley Muhammad's lecture on hip hop, and his interview that he did not too long ago on a hip hop podcast, talking about how hip hop is weaponized to encourage our brothers and sisters into certain lifestyle. So, what are your thoughts on that, brother? You know, in terms of the role of hip hop, not just in the United States, but you know, given that we have statistics in Canada as well, where we see that it's the same sort of disparities, and in Europe as well. But everywhere, this hip hop culture has been corrupted from what it was. So how does that play a role in your view, brother?
Well, to be sure to understand what is really going on with hip hop, we have to take the time to either hear what Brother Doc was saying, or you can see what he has researched on part 5, which is the weaponization of hip hop, in his book, the Pot Plot, Marijuana, Hip Hop, and the Scientific Assault on Black America. There you go. That's the book that you need to get. It's 800 pages, and in it you have it, how it's weaponized. So people have to read that book, or either watch the lectures by our brother Dr. Wesley Muhammad. So in it is clear to me that we're not talking about Black youth culture. That's a trick. It's the synagogue of Satan's culture, consisting in filth, drugs, weapons, sex, and slurs that is put upon Black youth, brown youth, and even white youth are getting into that. Now, with this in mind, and concentrating on Black youth, because there are victims in all the human family about this, I do believe it has an effect on Black youth, because it glorifies basically deviation and rivalry between each other. So we have gangs in New York, not in New York, I mean gangs in Montreal, and New York mostly, and some in surrounding cities of Montreal, right? Now, how can we expect brotherhood when they're bombarded by Satan's culture, posing as Black culture, where women are objects of sexual pleasure, drugs and weapons are regarded as cool, and like for instance, they use a lot of our brother Snoop Dogg's addiction to weed to make it look like it's something. It's cool. There's nothing to it. It's just a recreative drug. So you see, and to give a personal testimony, I remember around 18 years ago, I was on a bus, and I was hearing a young Black man with, you know, sort of Dr. Dre's headphones. Right. And he was listening to gangster rap. And the reason I know it was gangster rap, because at first I could hear the rhythmic. It wasn't Celine Dion singing, right? But I was hearing, and I'm not even joking, it was every 5 to 10 seconds you could hear a shotgun pumping. That was part of the song. Like somebody was rapping, and then you would hear So this is the influence. The influence of such culture most probably lead to drugs, and that when you get into drugs, that's the trap to get some slaves in prison. And so one more time, what the audience needs to remember is that we have to use the right wording. It's the synagogue of Satan's culture. That is not Black youth culture. And basically, in this book that you showed, you you get the names of the demons, basically, who infiltrated conscious, truthful rap, like you were saying, and hip hop that was talking to the powers. They infiltrated that, took it over, and are producing this filth that we're seeing. And I mean, we got the names. Brother Doc did the research. We got the names of who's behind it. So the synagogue of, to answer your question again, the synagogue of Satan's culture, yes, it has an effect on Black youth because they're putting Black people's face in front of them to get to Black youth, and for sure it helps to get prisons filled. Yes, sir.
Man, I'm glad you made that distinction, because that's real. You know, it's because otherwise you know, especially with the media, we characterize Black youth and Latino youth and Aboriginal Native youth as being, you know, these wild savages, but it's as though we are inherently like that. But it was socially engineered, and you know, maybe in another podcast we can get deeper into that subject, and maybe even get Dr. Wesley on, you know, to talk about it. So I'm putting that out there, Dr. Wesley. You know,
God willing. But brother, just the last thing, because you mentioned something very important for Canada, which we're living in Canada. The difference, because the natives here are the Black people of USA. It's the same. So you were saying that here, especially, it's the natives filling the prison. Well, right. They are the Blacks of the USA, if you want, but in Canada, because Canada is cousin of the same people who are at the south of the border. So I had to put that, because we love our native family, and they are the ones suffering greatly in Canada. Yes,
that's
sir.
Right.
Thank you.
That's right. As a matter of fact, the day of reconciliation and truth that is in Canada is being celebrated is a direct take from the Million Man March of the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan, the Day of Atonement and Reconciliation. But of course, they'll never tell us that. So we'll be right back. But first, I wanted to, with another question in our closing part. But first, I want to say to everyone, if you're in the greater Montreal area and you would like to have the Final Call newspaper physically delivered to your door, we have brothers of the FOI ready to make that delivery. You can contact us at jam02@gmail.com to get your physical copy. This is the paper that we're getting all this information from. So make sure you get a copy. And if you're not in the Montreal area, of course, the FOI are all over North America, but you can subscribe from the comfort of your home to the digital online edition by simply going on the Final Call digital edition.com. You can Google it. It's that simple. And definitely information, knowledge is power, and the knowledge of self. And this article that we are basing our analysis on for this week on slavery in corporate prisons, that's where we got it from. So make sure you subscribe. So as we close out, we got about 5 minutes. Let's end on more like of a positive note in terms of solutions, because we talked a lot about the problem, but now we need to deal with solutions. So knowing that these evil corporations are not going to just close shop and just say, well, kumbaya, we're not going to make this money anymore, and we're not going to exploit the Black and Latino youth and poor whites and whatnot. But now, especially dealing with our brothers and sisters from the Black and Latino community, how could we concretely, because some people might be saying, what can we do concretely to reduce the incarceration rate from, let's say, right now? What actions can we take after reading this article from the Final Call from our sister, Dr. Nisa Islam? What can we do, brother? Gabriel asks.
Well, there are many ways. I believe some of these ways that most people wouldn't expect to be part of the solution. For instance, changing one's eating habits. Say what? Some of you might remember the documentary Super Size Me, which was big in I think it was 1999 or 2000. And in it, you had Morgan Spurlock, the man who made the movie, visiting a school, Appleton Central Alternative High School in Wisconsin. Yeah, that's the movie or documentary. And in this school, again, Appleton Central Alternative High School in Wisconsin, which is for students with truancy and behavioral problems. Now, the school changed completely the menu at the cafeteria using fresh, healthy foods, lots of greens, lots of fruits, no frying, no sodas, basically no junk foods, right? And they saw a major change in the children, and such as better behavior, more focused, and more participation in class. And these were people that, when you looked in the documentary, you can't tell that they're supposedly truancy and behavioral problem children, basically. So this, of course, brings me evidently to How to Eat to Live, Volume 1 and 2. Like, you I don't know if you have any pictures of that, but see this. This is Volume 1, right. Volume 2, because this is basically, it tells us the proper food and proper time to eat for a healthy body, yes, but especially a healthy mind. So it tells us about fasting, which is now becoming a thing. But the Honorable Elijah Muhammad was teaching about this 60, 80 years ago. So now it's coming. White people are getting to it. So fasting, for instance, it clears the blood. It removes toxins that makes us sick and affect our thinking. So people are filled with sugar fix. We'll need a sugar fix. We're eating a lot of McDonald's, Starbucks, and stuff like that, and become more irritable. So by taking healthy foods, you can diminish those aspects of your behavior. And therefore, we have a black youth getting fed spiritual. We see a little bit earlier with the hip hop, spiritual and physical junk food. And we expect them to act and think right in society, right? Especially in USA. In USA, where you can get killed at a stop for driving while being black. So we know from Brother Dr. Wesley Muhammad, again, this book, very important book. What do we know? That the enemy is waging war by zip code. That's a part of the book. How food, that's the title, how food in black neighborhoods has been weaponized. Man. So, yes, sir. And
those are food deserts in the hood. It's food deserts. You can't find no organic fruits. Even out here in Montreal, you can't.
But even
forget it.
Even if you find organic food, that organic food is of less quality of the one you will find in white people's neighborhood.
Come on now.
So there's something, and by the way, Final Call newspaper, you actually get excerpts of the book How to Eat to Live.
That's right.
Every issue. So you don't want to buy the book for some reason, get the paper. Get the paper, right. And you have so much more in the paper. So that it's a no-brain deal. I mean, so food is changing the food habits is one of the ways, and the second way I want to talk about to help reduce the incarceration, right, is to start immediately a self-improvement journey. The Honorable Louis Farrakhan, the national representative of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, has produced study guides to help us, right? To help us improve by studying ourselves. That's because right. and these book tells us how to improve our will, overcome difficulty, the respect of authority, very, very needed if you're black in USA, and then some. So these are must, because we can only improve our neighborhoods by improving self first. And we are the basis of a community, which of course the family is the unit of a society. There you go. That beautiful book people need to read. Now, if you're not afraid of the word Islam, which only means submission to the will of God, I'm also suggesting to get this book. The Restrictive Law of Islam is Our Success by the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan. Why, you might ask? Well, first of all, I can guarantee if you read this and apply it, we are reducing the incarceration rate instantly. Let me read you a few a few laws we got in the Restrictive Law of Islam. No stealing, no gambling, because we know what gambling does. When you get
now you know some people in the hood are gonna be like, what?
Either that or you have a sword up on your head. No smoking of any kind, no drinking, no dope, and do not commit acts of violence on ourselves or others.
Right. There you go.
So we're talking about gangs, right?
There you go. And if we have self-love,
there you go.
If we start having a knowledge of ourselves, then we have a reason to improve ourselves. We have self-love, and then we have a reason to follow these laws because they make our lives better.
Right. Exactly. And just with the 6,000, there's a few more of that are just by nature, our nature, basically. It's not that hard to apply, although we are in Satan's world. So of course Satan's making it hard to just be ourselves. Indeed. But just with the sixth one that I talked to you about, we can reduce the problems with police by many folds, and at the same time putting back money in our pockets, which is also a key, because if you're in drugs, you have to have money, then you have to hustle, you have to steal to still get the drug. No, put the money back in your pockets, get a clear mind with some simple rules, simple laws. So these are easy and low-cost solutions. We only need to overcome our laziness to read, because we are lazy. We don't like to read. And by the way, the digital edition of the Final Call newspaper, you don't like to read, you have no excuses, because you can play the article. And that's what I do. Not because I'm lazy. Wait, not because I'm lazy. I'm doing something else at the same time, like cleaning the dishes, right? So you can actually hear it read to you. So no excuses. So we have to overcome that laziness of reading. And God will bless us with safer neighborhoods, basically, and less victims of the assault on our youth, I believe. So that would be my answer, bro.
That's wonderful, brother. And that's a great way to end it. And I'll add one more, A Torchlight for America. Get that book in terms of easy, simple steps to improve your life. But definitely thank you, brother. And let's add this. There's a lot of great work from great people all throughout North America trying to stop the violence among our youth and the criminalization, and trying to get programs out. So reach out to those people, and definitely want to give a shout out to student minister, regional minister, on the West Coast, with a lot of the work he's doing with the gangs, and our own brother, student minister Arthur Muhammad, doing a lot of work with the hip hop community, coming from that community. So shout outs to them. And so thank you, brother Gabriel. So that was time well spent.
Thank you.
So everyone, again, like, subscribe, share, get the word out there, and get yourself a copy of the paper. And we'll be back, God willing, next week to discuss more of the news that will save our lives, the knowledge that will save our lives. Because if you don't know what's going on in this world, you are a victim. The only way to get out of this is through the knowledge of yourself, and then finding the way to do for self. So on that, thank you again. And thank you to audience. And we will be back with you, God willing, next week. Till then, Assalamu alaikum. Peace.